Right, so I'm taking ashwagandha again, having not taken it for about an entire year at this point. You may or may not have seen this post that I did over a year ago now that basically outlined why I stopped taking it. So I tried ashwagandha for the first time sometime last year, purely out of curiosity really. I'd heard a few things about it, particularly talk of it being quite good for stress, and I thought, why not give it a go? Now, I'm not a very stressy person. I'm actually a very, very chilled out person 99.9% of the time. So I thought, why not give it a go and just see how it feels, see what it does. I took it for about 6 to 8 weeks, I can't quite remember, but then I stopped because I started getting some fairly unpleasant side effects. I felt that I became detached and emotionless, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, I genuinely felt like a bit of a robot. I'm not the most emotional guy in the world anyway, but when this ashwagandha really started taking effect after a few weeks to 4 weeks, man, I genuinely had this really unpleasant, weird feeling of being detached. I couldn't quite engage with people around me. Like if I was at the pub with mates where I'd normally be laughing around, having a great time, I found myself literally just like sat there kind of detached and not really enjoying myself and not really feeling invested or connected at all. It was really bizarre. I did some digging and I asked around, and it looked like many people had a very similar experience to me, particularly on that post that I did as to why I stopped. Tons of comments were saying the exact same thing. So I was like, right, probably a good idea for me to stop. I didn't really need it in the first place anyway. It was more just a curiosity thing, right? So why on earth am I taking ashwagandha again? Now, I think the best way of describing this and the best way of explaining this would be to first walk through what ashwagandha is and actually how it works. So ashwagandha, or Withania somnifera, if I'm saying that properly, is basically a herb. Now, we don't use the actual herb, we use the root. So the root is used to make the ashwagandha extract. This is where we find most of the bioactive compounds. Apparently, ashwagandha gets its name for ashwa, meaning horse, and gandha, meaning smell in Sanskrit, because apparently the root smells like a horse or something like that. It quite literally means horse smell. Now, ashwagandha is something that we call an adaptogen. Adaptogens are plants or mushrooms that have some kind of effect on things like stress, anxiety, fatigue, or your overall well-being. And the thing is, ashwagandha is very, very good at dropping your stress levels. The main mechanism of these stress effects with ashwagandha is that it looks like it can actually drop cortisol. Now, cortisol is your stress hormone. Ashwagandha has now been shown to quite literally significantly drop your cortisol levels when you take it. That's pretty flipping nuts. Now, we don't know exactly how this works for sure, but the main theory right now is that there's a steroidal lactone in ashwagandha called withanolides. And the idea is these withanolides influence the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, if I'm saying that anywhere near properly. You guys haven't come here for big words, so that's fine. Basically, ashwagandha goes in, cortisol goes down. At least that's what the research is telling us at this point. So why did I start taking it again? I think the answer is fairly self-explanatory. I'm very, very stressed at the moment, and ashwagandha is very good at mitigating stress. Like very good, like almost too good, genuinely. So I've been insanely stressed over the last few weeks for a variety of reasons. The main thing being I'm currently in the house buying process. It is nuts. I'm doing a whole series on that right now. I won't touch on the details right now. I'm kind of documenting the process. Anyway, that's why I've started taking ashwagandha again, as well as I'm doing loads of other stuff on the side. The workload is mental. You get the idea. I need to prioritize my sleep and drop my stress so that I feel functional enough to get all this stuff done and not have a mental breakdown. Like, I was literally dreaming about floor plans the other day. Ashwagandha was very much needed. So now that you know what ashwagandha is and you know a little bit about how it works, what is the best dose? What is the best practice for taking it? How do you go about supplementing it safely and for the best effects? And this is definitely far off what genuinely would be considered a best practice because it's still such early doors. The main reason being that we haven't established a minimal effective dose, a standard dose, and in the research right now, typical doses for ashwagandha range anywhere from 600 milligrams all the way up to 1500 milligrams. Like, that is a very big range. And more often than not in these studies, they don't know exactly how much or a percentage of the bioactive components withanolides are actually in the ashwagandha extract that they're using. Again, even in studies when they know exactly the percentage of withanolides in the ashwagandha they're using, the range is still 1.5% to 35% withanolides in the ashwagandha extract. So again, that is a massive range. So it is vital in these studies and actually in supplements that you buy to know exactly what percentage of withanolides you're getting from the supplement. And so many of the studies and so many of the supplements sold in the market do not disclose this information, meaning they're almost effectively useless. I would argue they are useless, because it's very hard to tell what the research is telling us. If you compare two studies that both used 600 milligrams of ashwagandha, and one of them contained 35% withanolides, and the other one was, you can imagine which one would get the more powerful result. So the answer to the question of what is the best dose is, we don't know, obviously. Now, me personally, I'd recommend starting with no more than 150 milligrams when you first start trying it. The reason being, ashwagandha is a pretty damn punchy supplement. It's one of the few supplements that you might actually notice an effect quite substantially, quite quickly. I would also recommend making sure you're going with a standardized extract. Ashwagandha KSM-66 tells you that it's been standardized to a strength. You know what you're getting. If you can't find KSM-66, at the very least, make sure you go for a supplement that specifies the percentage of withanolides in the supplement. So right now I'm taking 150 milligrams of a 5:1 ashwagandha extract containing about 1.5% withanolides. So definitely a smaller dose. And subjectively, it feels like it's working for me pretty nicely. Occasionally I will dose up another 150 milligrams. So I knew yesterday was going to be a crazy high stress day. So the day before I took it in the evening and again in the morning yesterday, just to kind of dose up. I have in the past gone up to 500 milligrams a day. I think for me that was just far too much and probably caused me to stop taking it, as I mentioned earlier. Now there seems to be one big caveat with ashwagandha that not enough people know about, and that is that you really want to make sure to cycle ashwagandha on and off. And this is because ashwagandha markedly reduces your cortisol, and it is not a good idea to chronically buffer your cortisol levels. This isn't necessarily well evidenced in research, but as a best practice, at least right now, it's a good idea to probably go 4 to 6 weeks on ashwagandha, followed by 2 to 4 weeks off ashwagandha, to allow your cortisol levels to re-establish. And it's because of this that I would say with a degree of confidence that there's like two best practices when it comes to taking ashwagandha. Number one would be taking it as and when you need it. If you're going to have a stressful day, maybe take it in the morning. If you want to ensure quite a good night's sleep or stress-free sleep, maybe take it in the evening. Or if, say, you have a really hectic day, take it the night before for a good night's sleep and then take it again in the morning of the stressful day. So simply just using it as and when you think you need it. But if you want to be taking it for longer periods, make sure to cycle it on and off. If you're doing 4 to 6 weeks on ashwagandha, definitely take a break for at least 2 to 4 weeks in between. This will let your cortisol levels re-establish. You do not want to chronically buffer your cortisol. Now, in terms of some additional benefits of ashwagandha, there's actually quite a lot in the evidence. Now, I'm going to say these are all maybes right now, purely because they're not as well evidenced as the stress and cortisol effect, but I still think they're worth touching on because some of the research here is really good. And by the way, I'll link absolutely everything that I've cited for this video in the description below. So there might be some cardiorespiratory enhancements, improvements in musculoskeletal performance and muscle recovery. Ashwagandha might slightly increase testosterone, but not really enough to shout home about. There are some studies that show that ashwagandha usage does slightly increase testosterone, but not in a way that would actually matter. If you're someone with healthy levels of testosterone, there's probably no point taking ashwagandha for that reason. At least there isn't enough evidence to back that up yet. It might be good for immunity, it might be good for sexual health, both men and women. It might be good for cognition, it's likely very good for sleep. And there is also some evidence to say that it's good for just overall quality of life and well-being. So what effects have I noticed so far? Now this time round, because I'm taking a much lower dose, the effects I've noticed are far less extreme, but they're definitely there. I feel subjectively far less stressed. Now I know we can't rule out placebo here, but I think it's somewhat safe to say, based off of the evidence as well as my own experience here, that there is something going on in regard to my stress response and my cortisol levels. No definites, but it's a safe assumption. I feel way less stressed than I did a few weeks ago. Way less stressed. When I take it before bed, my sleep is so much better. I'm actually sleeping the whole way through the night in a restful way. I'm waking up feeling rested and good, which is a really big deal. That alone is a mega result. I find that I'm performing better under high stress situations, like I'm not really feeling overwhelmed. You know that kind of like anxious feeling you get, that kind of like chest feeling you can get when you're feeling really anxious? that sort of goes away with ashwagandha, at least in my own experience, which I think is definitely worth noting. So what does my experience actually tell us? Frankly, absolutely bloody nothing, realistically. It's my own experience, it's subjective, it's irrelevant in the eyes of actual evidence. But we now have evidence to say that it does in fact have an effect on things like stress and sleep, amongst those other effects. So I can somewhat confidently say that it's worth taking for people that are very stressed or want to mitigate stress in some way. The other effects are interesting, they definitely need more research. Frankly, the whole damn thing needs more research. We don't have a standardized dose. It would be really nice to have an idea of effects on different genders, different body weights, for example, to establish the best dose for different body weights and genders, etc. I feel like that would be really flipping useful. I think the side effects definitely need more research done on them. That kind of lack of emotional feeling or feeling robotic or detached, I think could definitely be researched. That's really interesting. It would also be really great to establish a best practice for the cycling, for like the 2 to 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, whatever. Because right now it's just a very rough guideline. Me personally, I will be coming off it in a few weeks for sure. I've been on it for 2 weeks now. I'll probably do another week and a half, something like that, and then come off for a month. But right now I can't complain. It has been so useful for me in such a high period of stress. So what is your experience with ashwagandha? I'd absolutely love to know. Please share your stories, your experiences, whether they're good or bad. I think it's all important, it's all useful. And as per the usual, if you are interested in my one-to-one coaching, I help my clients enhance their health, transform their bodies, and maintain their results with ease. My coaching spots are going very quickly this time of year, so if you are interested in securing a coaching spot, just book in via the link below. And for everyone else, I will see you next week.